It's very exciting that we are having an artist talk today with you, Mark, and it's been a tremendous luxury to work with you. And we have worked together for, what is it, 2 years now,
Yes.
to reach the point where we have the project um, Untelling Stories, and you call it Us also as an abbreviation of it, within the project DISTANCIO. And a big part of having a successful project working under these conditions is to find also people who dare to be people, artists and hosts in the different cities, where Tronos is one of them. It's very important to have that host and artist where you can absolutely be honest and share your weaknesses, your strengths, your hesitations, your doubts, but also the vision of doing a project. And we've been doing this now, Claes, together for a long time.
Yeah.
And you introduced Tronos to me in a beautiful way, and I tried to transmit some part to Mark, because one of the things that originally came across to me was I heard several people here, not necessarily you, I heard several people here saying, oh, Tronos, what do you mean what it is? I'm not sure what it is. And that's when I came to think of an artist who would be perfect for excavating the identity of a place, not in terms of looking for what is the place within that city, but within the body of people being in the city and investigating what identity is and sharing that experience.
Mm.
And Mark, I'm absolutely thrilled over the human interconnectedness that your work is presenting, both in the gallery space where it's currently, and it's in the gallery space, it's a hybrid space, and we will return to that, and you will introduce a little bit of that story to us. But I would like Mark to just say I'm really impressed with the togetherness you've been showing with your work. And I know part of that work is also that you have developed kind of a unique method, I would say. Could you elaborate a little bit on that method?
Mm. Anna, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Yes, I think I've had some deep questions around identity, and I'd say in the last few years, identity and particularly identity politics have become such a mainstream thing in media and in culture. And my experience of that is that identity separates rather than brings people together. So especially with identity politics, there's almost a neo-tribalism going on. And so my investigations are more investigating identity and noticing that a lot of the things that I identify with, or what people identify with, are just stories that are made up. So the project is really questioning, do we need those stories? What are the stories? Do they serve us? Can we rewrite the stories? Can we let go of the stories? And in doing so, start finding things within us that brings us together. And yeah, and then through my experimentations and methodology, finding ways of working with material that would express that. So in English, yarn, a story can also be represented by yarn. A yarn is also a story. So there's the working with yarn. And I've taken clothing as a symbol for identity. So the cutting up of clothes or the making of yarn is a way of unraveling what the story is behind that identity. And then I also chose to work with the format of a craft circle. And I've used that loosely. It's more I mean, it's a re-territorializing of what a craft circle is about. It's not necessarily for crafters, but I choose craft circles because I've participated in them for a number of years because I'm an avid knitter. And what I've noticed about craft circles, they are spaces where people come together and they drop their guard. We drop our guard. We're busy with our hands, we're busy with our bodies, we're in the same space, and we get really comfortable. We're focusing on what we're doing with our hands. And there's a whole lot of unguarded chatting that goes on. So often it's a situation where you get to know people quite intimately. And I thought that would be a really interesting stage, as it were, for a social sculpture intervention. So it's not that it's necessarily for crafters, it's just that it's something that people can come together and work with their hands. And the methodology of cutting up the clothing, firstly, it's clothing that participants would have worn themselves, so it's intimate, it's personal. And the actual method of cutting up the clothing is quite simple. So it's almost anybody or everybody could do. It's not restricted by if you're very crafty or good with hand skills or whatever. So there was a universal appeal about the methodology.
And I know that one of the very first craft circle took place during the summer solstice.
Yes, yeah. So the project formed itself, and then it was specifically being launched in Tranos, and then I wanted to also place it in a large, so that was its primary context, but in the larger context was also within the seasons and larger cycles. And I think that also becomes part of the story. So if we cut through our immediate identities, we can reach into something far greater than ourselves. I think it's underpinned in the method, or in the content of the work.
Right. And you work with several groups here in Toronto at different ages also. And Claes, you have been a participant in the very first circle, and then also you've seen some of the others. And what is happening in the room when you're part of that? Does it feel strange? Does it feel like, how is the sort of narrative of or the story of a craft circle?
Yeah, it's different. The groups aren't the same. They think in what do you say, different ways. Yeah. The youths are more interested, and it's kind of magical to talk to a person so far away. And the elder people, they have some issues with the language, but they could communicate in other ways. I think you make some connections in other ways.
And this kind of touches, I think, upon the one of the aspects of your work, and that is what happens when we are actually physically sharing a space. Now, when we're doing this over video, you were in Cape Town, we're here in Toronto. And I mean, I even though if I don't see Claes all the time, I know he's there. And there's something happening in that bodily experience of a room, of a space, when you're there together, doing something together. And I was just thinking, perhaps the generation who's really avid to being online and kind of using different platforms for communication, and has another take on what it means to be a digital being. Then also from those who perhaps have not even tried to be in a Skype call, in a Zoom, whatever. we would call the application we're using, but it's also something I think that is lost there. It's not only that some are young and some are old, it's also all this capacity that we have formed who we are, in terms of what feels like. Is it okay to meet a person for the first time over internet, or is it better to meet that person in the physical space? And perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on those perspectives of your work, Mark.
Yes, those are all very important aspects to the work and also what I'm investigating, because what's key to the performances are being in the same space as other people, and that presence, and also the magic that happens, the magic that arises when we are in the same space together. Unforeseen things happen. Synergy of people coming together. And of course, that was the original intention, that I would be a resident artist in Tranås, and I would form craft circles throughout the town. I originally envisioned being in people's homes, that I would come and I would have a meal with people, and then after the meal, we would make some yarn and then listen to each other's stories. And then of course COVID happened, so we had a new spin on the whole project. So the project had to be adapted to become so that we could do it remotely, which sets up a whole lot of challenges. And these things of dealing, now we have the interface of technology. So we have this other entity, or can we call technology an entity? I'm not quite sure. And that was very frustrating. It was because I found it very difficult to experience or have that sense of presence and that togetherness through the remote connection. And yes, what you brought up, Claes, the different, what would you call it, the different abilities that people, or attitudes that people have towards technology, where the youth don't really have a hassle, they're quite excited by it. And then also from my side, that I felt so remote. I felt so left out. The circles were happening in Tranås and I wasn't there. I was there through the screen, but I mean, there were times when I would just be watching a blank screen because people were on the other side of the monitor or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that was a very strong message that came through the performances. Although I was catching a glimpse at Tranås and the people of Tranås and having a taste of that life, I also want to reiterate or to emphasize that technology doesn't do it. We can't believe that we can get away with technology as to connect us. We need to be in space together, in spaces together. If we don't hold on to that, we lose something so vital about being human. And yeah, I really want to emphasize that, as that came through the performance. And in spite of that, there was still a sense of togetherness. There was still a sense of connection.
I think also we have the level that you were describing among those people at Epic, the younger generation, that it is also the excitement of meeting someone who is a little bit different, whose identity is not exactly, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, around there, but actually speaking to a person who is an artist, who really formed an identity and also an identity that is flexible. Yeah. Because I think that is one of the things that as artists, we don't become locked in a certain form. We expand, we evolve, we constantly challenge ourselves. We do a lot of things that are quite uncomfortable, and we can hold that stress sometimes, in a better way than other times. And of course, we get tired of things also. But that is one of the things that I think art is doing in general. That is that we are used to chaos in some capacity. and therefore also what is, I guess, requested from artists who gets involved in this type of project, I should also add, that is that capability of, stepping into chaos and just, what is it that I see here from a whole new perspective, and then going back to, a more secure or secluded space and rethink that, redo that, and then think, how can I, in my artistic work, mediate this for a bigger group of people to, and not necessarily say this is what I have experienced, but allow for the artwork to express that in a very intricate way. And I love that about your work that you have done here, Mark. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's installed in a space that you have here in Tranås, which is quite unique in many senses.
Yeah, sure.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's from the beginning, it's a part of a building. There were shops before. It's a kind of corridor, what do you call it?
Like a little alley almost.
Alley, yeah. And there used to be a exit door for fire, if there were fires.
Oh, emergency. Yeah.
Thank you.
Or evacuation
and
door.
we found it, and we talked to the owner, and we could borrow that. It was
so what
unused.
you're saying is that walking down the sidewalk, it looked like there was a wall.
Yeah,
and then you discovered it was a door.
Yeah.
And behind that door, that's where you found these the former display windows from the store.
It was only a passage for an emergency exit from the library. So we have seen it before, and it was there unused. So we borrowed it, and we set up an exhibition about the Swedish punk music era. Yeah, that's was quite big here in Tranås and around it. Yeah. So nowadays we have between 10 to 20 exhibitions there. Everyone could book a week and put out their things and thoughts and photos. Yeah.
And sometimes it's used for exhibitions like your, Mark, which is running longer and is programmed. So it's a flexible space, from what I hear, that is used both for artists and perhaps for organizations as well who want to talk about their work. So it's really a kind of a vitrine towards publicness.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely accessible from the sidewalk. And even when the gates are closed at night, you can still see kind of into the gallery.
It's really nice.
And there's also, for those who have not visited this specific gallery, there's also another capacity of that little alleyway. How deep is it? It's like 12 meters or something, maybe. So on one side, you have these glass vitrines, the display, and then there is a wall of some
wall of kindness.
A wall of kindness, but it's a cold wall from the beginning. It's some sort of stone material. But then, what have you done to this alleyway?
Yeah, we have put some hooks there for clothing. So people that have too many clothes can put up their clothes, and those who have few clothes can get some clothes for the winter. So,
And to me, this as a curator of DISTANCIO and volunteering here to help you, Mark, to install the work physically. When I came here, we had it was 5 degrees or something, and it was like Celsius, and it was really cold. And they were de-installing one exhibition, and then I saw, who forgot all their coats here? So I didn't know this concept. But then, the following day when I arrived and everything was calm, and I could look at the space, and I shared it with you. You said, It's wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. And we hadn't anticipated that. We didn't know that. So on the one hand, we've got our exhibition, which is the deconstructed skeletons of clothing. And then on the other side, you've got a whole wall of clothing hanging on. And that's the magic of being in a space where we hadn't anticipated that. We didn't even know about that. And there, visually, it's beautiful. It's perfect. Yeah.
A lot of stories.
It's bringing out it brings the street in. It just does it all. It's wonderful. That's the magic of art making.
So Mark, if we would, if I would ask the two of you, I guess, since we have been doing this for several reasons for such a long time, the 2 years we've been working wouldn't have had to be 2 years, but due to things out of our control, from the first steps in the project until now, it's been about 2 years. So can you elaborate a little bit on why or how, or you could keep up the work with the project, hence all the different challenges we...
Will you start, Mark?
How we could continue the project?
Yeah, I mean, how could you continue to be committed to do the work that we explored for you to do here? And then there were some challenges, and as an artist, you were put on a little bit of hold, and then, you know, we found that we could move ahead again, and then another obstacle came, and one of the last obstacles we faced was COVID.
Yes.
And it's like, it's hard not to use very strong words, but how is it that you would endure?
Well, I think it's what you pointed out. I think that's what we as artists do. And then I think that also is the role that I've got to play in society, to be an example to others, that it's not only artists who are flexible, we all are flexible. So, I mean, just looking at the building, Claes, and deciding, well, we could use this, is you tapping into your creativity, you being an artist in that moment. We have to see what's going on and then adjust. Because if I insist on things being the way they are, and I start forming a story around it and I get identified with it, I'm not going to get very far. I'm going to get stuck. So I think what the project is saying is I would say it's a way of navigating life, being willing to unravel things and to put them together. So be firm when it needs to be firm and say, well, I'm going to stick to this. I've got to hold the integrity of something here. I can't forego integrity. I can't short that, but then I've got to be flexible given the context. So what's the most appropriate way for me to behave or operate in this situation without losing integrity? And that it's to move forward. So what I also love about this project is that I feel this was incubated in Tranås, and now it can go further. I could take it to other cities, other towns. It also was very interesting having the technological remote component thrust on me. I hadn't anticipated that either. And I certainly learned a lot. But it also opened up things. I mean, what I hadn't really anticipated was a language issue. Because I'm first, you know, English speaking first language, and then realizing language was quite an issue in some of the meetings. And it was interesting that when I was with the teenagers, not only was language a bit of an issue, but it was very noisy. We couldn't actually hear each other. But because we were on Zoom, we could use the chat function, which was quite interesting. So we were able to communicate in that way. And of course, being on the internet, it was easy for us to quickly translate words as well via Google, whatever. So in spite of the limitations of the technology, it also brings in some gifts and surprising gifts, which can enhance the situation. Yeah, I mean, I feel very fortunate and very lucky to have had this time to incubate this project. I mean, I really wish I had come to Tranås. I really wish I had met everybody in person and actually experienced the town. But I do feel like I just got a taste of it. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
Everything you said though adds to the unfolding story that you have in your art piece here. So it's also nice to hear that an idea in a very remote place for you, at a long distance far away from you that you never have visited, can at the same time become almost like an integral part of you, because you are now Tranås in that sense. And it's also nice to know that a quite small town in Sweden can affect an artist in South Africa. And then again, we have another thread or a piece of yarn linking on to future places that you will do this work. And in that sense, Tranås will be in this story sort of when it continue to travels.
Yeah, yes. Yes, I mean, that also, just to go back to the thing of the unexpected, in the project, there were so many unexpected things that happened, right from COVID was unexpected, technology was unexpected, but kind of looking out for the unexpected in a way becomes a method in itself. And then also listening to things as they emerge. So one of the original ideas was that through the project, we would develop a large ball of yarn. So almost a monumental ball of yarn, which would come to hold all the stories of the people from Tranås. And then it became, I think in the first or the second circle, we said, no, we actually should keep all the balls of yarn separate. How the stories get lost if there's just one ball. The project itself started saying, well, and the people participating said, no, let's do it this way rather. And I think that was a good decision. I think it's good to see the small parts making up the whole, because that really is key to the project as well. People coming together, separate people coming together.
Yeah. We was looking forward to see you here. Quite the hard things was to communicate to people, to come near other people in this pandemic situation. And we have to be there in the same room to communicate with them.
Yeah.
But it was a real, we have to make some contacts with part of communities to help us and so on.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't so easy.
No.
But I think it went quite well anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should say a few words in regards to, you took items of clothing, it could be a shirt, and then you cut along all the major seams, correct?
Yes.
And then you had bigger pieces and you cut up that to smaller, like strands almost. And then you made that into individual balls of yarn.
Yes.
And then this material, all the material from the collective performances are now turned into a sculpture.
Yes. Yeah.
In this display window we talked about earlier. I think we missed out on describing it a little bit.
Yes. So there's also, I describe it as the filleting of the clothes. So the panel of the gets liberated from the seams of the clothing. And we've been calling them the skeletons. So it's just the skeletons that are left. And then a continuous strand of yarn is cut from the panels, which then gets bundled into a ball of yarn. And we've collected those, and you made this gorgeous installation in the Smutton Gallery with all of those. And then another surprise happened was at one of the, well, it was actually at the first circle. Matilda pulled up a trasmattan, which is a traditional mat, a rag rug, which is made in Sweden. And the same method of cutting up clothing and making yarn is used for those articles, those objects. So that is the next idea, that the yarn is then going to be collected and taken and woven into a trasmatta, which will be the final artwork for Tranos, along with the skeletons. And that wasn't anticipated either. That also revealed itself through the process and the performance. Again, the magic.
Yeah, the magic, and I think the magic happens when we are in the same space and we feel that we can absolutely trust the other people who are there. And by that environment, we can also go into fragile or vulnerable positions and playing with ideas like, could we change perhaps and make this instead, without seeing that as a compromise or see that as a loss or something.
Yeah.
But actually something that we hold and form together, and something new is happening.
Yeah.
And that, I think, kind of summarizes the idea behind social sculpture also. That is something that is happening in the interaction between a specific site and the individuals who are there.
Yes.
And even though in that process, when people are participating, perhaps everyone is not thinking, oh, I'm now part of doing art, or I'm now an art piece or something. But it is that process that you as an artist then can see other elements on. So with this, I would like to say that if the end piece of this is the skeletons and trasmattan, then also the 2 years we spent together is also part of the whole process of making a social art project.
Yes,
so
very much.
For those who think that you just make a trasmatta, that's not the beauty of it. The beauty of it is the process leading up to it, and all the feelings, emotions, and experiences, and fears, and everything else we have had. That is what is the artwork.
Very much, yeah. Yeah, because that doesn't necessarily get seen, but it was there all along.
And what is a little bit different from DISTANCIO and the 4 towns that we've been working with the past 2 years, and the first edition of this work stretching out in what the region can do in the arts perspective about art in public spaces that are not necessarily of monumental and material definition. We have worked here directly into the arts administration on the municipal level. That is new from the previous project, where they worked directly into the art institutions. And for me, it's been absolutely fantastic to work with you as well, Claes. It's
same to you.
Yeah, but hang on for a little bit. I am always, I get really, really happy when I see public workers, people who work for the public system, that they remain compassionate, that they remain curious, that they have a stamina. And so I would like to thank you for all those things and for being a host of DISTANCIO so Mark could make his great work. So I leave the last two words to you guys, or the last sentences, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to second that as well. Claes, huge shout out to you and your enthusiasm and engagement. I'm just thinking right to the first craft circle where you put on the skeleton. I mean, you were right in there with your enthusiasm. And yeah, I mean, forming the other craft circles was just wonderful. Also, Matilda, she was so important to forming the circles and getting involved. And you, Anna, I mean, this wouldn't have happened without you. You've been incredible. And the conversations I've had with you and spurring me on and your belief in art is just wonderful. It's really filled my heart. And I just feel so lucky and I'm very grateful to have been part of this.
And I will say the remaining sentence. Yeah. I will see this part as part 1, Mark Rautenbach. Part 2 is when you arrive to Tranos.
I would love that.